Hey there, I want to just share this with you, something I stumbled over yesterday, something I find curious, but hear me out. This is a triangle, the big one. Looks a bit like a Sierpinski because it's a bit of a fractal thing, but the big triangle here has, along any one of its edges, 3 dozen smaller triangles. So this is a 3 dozen frequency triangle, because every one of these fingers between this corner of a triangle and that is equivalent to an interval between two spheres, like here. And that's what we call frequency in synergetics. So this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, a dozen triangles along this, and another dozen and another, which is 3. And every one of these has a dozen times a dozen, which is a grow triangles in it. Right. But why am I showing you this thing at all? That's more perhaps drawn out on the other side here. So this says frequency 3 dozen, which has exactly 4 grow, 7 dozenand6 of these small triangles in it. Like if I drew all of them in, the whole, the sum total of all these small triangles is 4 grow, 7 dozenand6. And the gaps between them, which are the small triangles, the white ones, blank ones going the other way, those are 4 grow, 4 dozenand6 triangles. 4 grow, 4 dozenand6. And all of them together is 9 grow, which is the same as 3 dozen times 3 dozen, or to the second power. Okay, now why am I going on about this? The reason I looked into this is because of that number. 4 grow, 7 dozenand6 is the same as what in decimal numbers is called 666. 666. And there's a lot of sixes in there already, and this whole thing is full of sixes as well, because 3 dozen is 6 times 6. So there's 6 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 is that number. And the reason I stumbled over the fact that this is one of the so-called triangular numbers, which is going on here, was not on this level, though, of the fractals of space-time, but on the next level, because I have a table where I have drawn out lots of the spherical numbers, so the numbers of spheres in a triangle, the numbers of spheres in a 4-eyes, the numbers of spheres in an 8-eyes, and so forth, in vector equilibria, the numbers of vectors in them in some cases. And looking into that table, looking for that number 666, because it came up in the mathematician's video named as the evil number. I was just curious, because oftentimes numbers that have a specific taboo on them turn out to be super resonant and relevant in synergetics. A good example for that is 7, which is 6around1, and then 13, as they call it, which is really a dozen around 1, or a dozen and 1, which is the number of spheres in a vector equilibrium, right? And 7 is a plane of that. It's one of the, it's probably no good to say all of this in detail when I'm not showing you the thing. It's probably, yeah, if you want to see that, let me know. I've got plenty of things to show what I'm trying to say there. But I looked for that number 666 in my table, and it turned out to be one of the so-called triangular numbers, which is the number of spheres in a triangle. And it turns out that is the frequency of 5011, which is as many years as I'm old. 5011, or as they say, 35 frequency triangle has that many 666 or fourgrosssevendozensix triangles in it. No, not triangles, spheres in it. All right. And because the spherical structures of spacetimes are fractal, what is an interval on one level of the fractal becomes a sphere on the next, becomes a triangle on the next, becomes a triangle in the inverse on the next, before returning to a sphere, I think. So, you know, we can kind of glide through that numbers table, and what I did here was then to take that frequency of 2011, 35, take that one. Did I say 3011 before? I meant 2011, I'm sorry. Taking that, you know, if I took as many of those beads and laid them out in that layer, it would look, it is basically the same as in this case having these triangles. So every one of these triangles with pencil in it, every one of those is equivalent to a sphere on a frequency below that. And what is, in that case, the gaps between those spheres turns into these white gaps, the polyform complements of the other triangles, the yin to the yang, or yang to the yin, or whatever we want to call those. So that's a beautiful pattern that just kind of spoke to me now, looking more into it, and I wanted to really see it and not just have it on a table. So I, before I went out, and I could make one with the beads, but that's a lot of beads. So instead I first drew it out like this, and I was beginning to do it like that, and then went into more of a Sierpinski fractal thing, and found this beautiful, beautiful little pattern where basically the big triangle clearly shows as 3 frequency of something, and each one of those lower frequencies is a 2 frequency, so it's 3 times 2 frequency, which is again 6, you know, always the 6s in these. And every one of the 2 frequencies of these, every one of the 1 frequencies has 6, 2 frequencies has a dozen, 4 frequency is 2 dozen, 3 frequency is 3 dozen. And yeah, there's a bit of a weave thing going on here with the pattern that I guess I could have drawn these all in one line, but every time I think about it, I find a good reason why I did it this way, and I think it's got to do with the fractal and the inverse and outwards, so to speak, because really, in a way, these are, every one of these small ones has a tiny little bit of an overlap with the next one, the way that I drew these, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's because I put that line on the 7 instead of the 6. I guess I should try one more where I put it on the 6, but for whatever reason I thought it nice like this, and it's a beautiful kind of back and forth that is very much like what happens in all of these weaves. Speaking of which, just as a little side note, I've also woven this the other day into the little tree ship that I shared with you how to weave. Like I showed in a video the other day how one can grow one of these structures, you know, and it's scale independent. And I just put in this weave, and it's a kagome weave. It's the same thing as that one, where this is only shaped because it holds one another, synergy. And for the first time I tried out putting loops, turns of the line, of one line around the eye that I wanted to weave into, to then go through those turns in turn with my kagome weave, and it's turned out so nice. So this was just an idea, and it's not perfect yet, but it's, I think, the nicest kagome weave that I've done so far in any one of these structures, and I'm so happy about it. Yeah, just lovely. And with that, you know, too many things to say all the time, but I hope that any of this had any relevance to anyone else. My mind is tickled by this, and I find it, just to round that story off, I really find it fascinating to see that another one of these sort of taboo numbers has such a resonance within the spherical realm. That's all I want to say. Peace.